When is murder not murder? When it's a lesser crime, like husbandicide or infanticide. Killings of lesser legal consequence, committed by women. When killings are not crimes at all, and thus not prosecuted. It's easier on downtrodden damsels who kill, and cheaper for the Canadian public too. Canadian lawyer Elizabeth Sheehy lives in a country that does not employ capital punishment, but after 25 years of diligent work, she has found a way to get around that inconvenience with a legal backdoor. A carefully stylized form of lethal vigilante justice. Sheehy has written a book explaining to Canadian women and to their lawyers how they can use case law and performance art to legally execute men and simultaneously save Canadian taxpayers the expense of a costly trial. In addition to teaching Canadian law at the University of Ottawa, Sheehy is a prominent public intellectual, a legal activist, co-counsel to the Women's Legal Education and Action Fund, LEAF, Link, and to the Elizabeth Fry Societies, Link, and has a curriculum vitae impressive enough to warrant her classification as an expert in women's legal issues. Professor Elizabeth Sheehy is as mainstream and connected as it gets, and she is advocating murder. So why isn't the mainstream talking about state feminism's push to legalize murder of men by women? The answer to that is simple. Journalists within our mainstream have been convinced of the expertise of this educated, connected, and sophisticated professor who has not only a long history of legal and academic success, but an agenda which she has not previously exposed to public scrutiny. Now, after 8 years of research, Elizabeth Sheehy, acclaimed professor of law, has published her masterpiece, Defending Battered Women on Trial, in which she posits that women who have murdered their male partners are not only morally just, which is a legal term describing acquittals, but that they show moral courage. Link. She argues that these praiseworthy killers should not be tried for murder in the Canadian court system for a number of reasons, not least of which is that they are rarely convicted. This, she claims, is evidence of public sentiment that female-perpetrated murder is justifiable. What she omits to mention in this train of reason is that all violent crimes committed by all people have very low rates of conviction. Feminists have frequently used these low conviction rates, when narrowly examined only for rape offenses, to claim that society condones the commission of that crime, thus rape culture. Sheehy is effectively using feminist logic commonly used to claim ours is a rape culture to say that it is actually a murder culture of men by their wives. But the only difference being that rape of women is bad and we should oppose it, whereas murder of husbands by their wives is apparently no problem. It's courageous even. Recognizing that her conclusions are unconventional, Sheehy maintains it is simply the will of the wider population expressed through the acquittals of female killers in Canadian criminal courts. It is not actually her own personal opinion that female killers should be given a legal pass. It's just an opinion that no one has ever promoted before in the form of a book. But finally, after 25 years of diligent activism and lobbying in pursuit of legally permissible husband killing, she has pulled the curtain back to let the world see her great creation, pieced together from ill-fitting, mismatched assertions and pseudo-logical loopholes. Dr. Sheehy's monster is almost ready to lurch upright and begin terrorizing Canada's unwary citizens. Sheehy's book argues that when a woman kills a sleeping victim, charging her with murder is unfair. Link. It's arbitrary, and it fails to recognize the reality of women's lives, and it also wastes Canadian taxpayer dollars to prosecute. But with the book's publication and over a dozen interviews reiterating and clarifying the book's thesis, Canada's most influential and respected feminist legal scholar has been very clear about her intentions. She's not merely telling us to legalize female-committed spousal murder. she's hoping to provide Canadian women with a legal how-to manual. So, why is the 25-year-long feminist project of legalized husband killing not now a mainstream news feature talked about by anyone besides the human rights activists on the so-called hate site A Voice for Men? When she is correctly accused of advocating murder, as she was by Barbara Kay in the National Post, link, Sheehy says the motive for her book is that lawyers must provide clients with the best defense possible, and women don't seem to be aware that fighting a murder charge instead of settling for manslaughter is more likely to result in an acquittal. Somehow, while maintaining that the law disadvantages women, Sheehy happily reports that courts rarely convict women for murder. But Professor Sheehy isn't just redefining words like unfair and disadvantaged. She's also redefining what it means to be an expert. In this case, it means she has a very, 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 very strong opinion, while remaining largely ignorant of her own topic of specialization. In the course of promoting her book, the professor has conducted interviews and written articles explaining and justifying her position. Having examined more than 90 cases in her research, she is an expert on domestic violence and on spousal murder in Canada. However, when asked by the CBC on December 19th of 2013 if the changes in law that she recommends would help battered men, she responded by saying, "Well, I don't know. I'm not an expert in men's experience of violence at the hands of women. You'd have to find a different expert on that topic." When asked if her recommended changes would apply to same-sex couples where a woman is battered by another woman, her female partner, Sheehy replied, "Well, again, I'm not an expert on that." The self-defined expert either has no knowledge of the reciprocal nature of most domestic violence common in dysfunctional relationships, or she is being willfully obtuse. It's like a biologist studying plant ecology of a species which is codependent upon another species, but that scientist then emerging from a 25-year career knowing nothing about the partnering plant. It's unclear whether Sheehy's case is that she's an incompetent in her own field of expertise or if she is simply a fraud. But on the question of why women don't leave abusive situations, Sheehy told the CBC on December 19th in 2013 that women can't leave abusive men because upon leaving their risk increases 9-fold. However, in January, she told Megan Murphy of Feminist Current that the risk is 8-fold. On December 16th of 2013, she told The Loop that a woman is killed by an abusive partner every 6 days. But relaying that claim in her CBC interview, it became a woman killed every 4 days. And over at Feminist Current, it went back to every 6 days again. I suppose the market for truth fluctuates on a monthly cycle. But, quoting her, she says, "But probably, more importantly, it's actually quite dangerous for women to leave. And the most dangerous time, the time at which women face, I think it's an 8-fold increase in being vulnerable to intimate femicide, is within the 18 months after a woman has left a man. So telling a woman to just leave or expecting women to just leave is actually putting their lives at risk. And the lives of their kids. It is simply, bad advice. Unless the woman has a very careful, risk assessment and safety plan in place." End of the quote. Have you never heard of intimate femicide before? Neither had we. It's another one of those social science terms that feminists made up. It describes a special kind of death. One of the pioneers of the term, Diana E.H. Russell, described it as the killing of females by males because they are females. Link. And if that wasn't a cherished enough gift to the English language, they bless us with the ensuing assurance that intimate partner femicide only accounts for 5 to 8% of all murders of men, disproportionately affecting women to a large extent, making it a gendered problem. Link in the low bar. Now, in the written version of this article, you are invited to reread that sentence several times and check the source. Femicide, 5 to 8% of all murders of men. That was not a typo. But after explaining that women are safer to stay in abusive relationships and kill their partners instead of leaving because of femicide and reasons, Sheehy complained about accusations that she's advocating for murder. According to Sheehy, fewer men would die if they just gave women the things they need. Here's another quote of hers. She says, women who also leave face issues around custody and access with respect to their kids. We don't place control in the hands of women so they can, in fact, keep their children away from abusers like what we're talking about. So we have a problem there. You know, many battered women are mothers, and that makes them doubly vulnerable because they can't simply escape with their children without facing sanction by the criminal justice system and family law. Then, of course, there are the other problems. Access to money, social welfare, long-term housing, all the things that women need if they're going to leave and create new lives of freedom and safety. Incidentally, as an expert on domestic violence, Sheehy likely knows that it is women who are the primary killers of children. Link in the low bar. Infanticide is a word specially created for women who kill babies and is given a lighter sentence than the murder charge that a man would face for the same crime. Husbandicide, the female killing of men, is really just the new black. And by black, of course, we mean nigger. Link in the low bar. Predictably, Sheehy feigns surprise at critics who assert that she is telling women it's justified to kill men. Another quote of hers. But you know, for those people that are very concerned that somehow I'm not doing justice to men's lives, what I say to them is, what we need to do is invest in women's safety, because when women are safe, are able to exit with their children and protect their children, men do not die. Men, do what women want or we'll kill you. This would be contemptuously pathetic, except for the fact that Sheehy is a veteran of 25 years of legal activism, which has been spent changing the laws in favor of her ideology. Professor Elizabeth Sheehy is the law. To understand this as anything other than an overt and flamboyant evil, it's necessary to see Sheehy's feminist vision of what a woman is. A woman is so weak that all of the available female-supporting-centered infrastructure is not enough. Even though only 4 out of the 91 women she studied for her book were sent to prison for murdering their spouses, she thinks women are disadvantaged and misunderstood by the law. The law which suggests they not kill people. Conversely, men's human rights activists take the view that women are competent and capable adults. Some of them even vote, obtain law degrees, and teach at major Canadian universities. In the debate over whether Sheehy is incompetent or an outright fraud, there is a third possibility. She entered the profession of law with a malevolent intention of perverting it. I'm John the Other. Thanks very much for listening to this reading, and have a lovely day.